Righty ho, guys. How you doing? It's Tuesday night, May 17th. You are watching Knowledge or Nonsense, where we vet patterns, processes, and perspective to see are the practices we're engaging in, is this knowledge and sound based, like evidence based, or is this nonsense? And so today we're here, we're glad to be here. We're going to talk about communication intra and interdepartmentally. But even first things first, man, how you doing, Luane?
Hey, physically I'm well, spiritually sound. I was mentally shooken up over and extremely saddened by the events that took place in Buffalo, New York. So
Oh, at the grocery store,
the
Tops
grocery
grocery
store,
store.
yeah, that was hard to watch. That was really hard to watch. Um, and I know you've seen it, right? It's been
Yeah,
national news, so that's been a tough. It's been a tough week. It's been a really tough week.
it has been tough, and I think it's tough because you put your best foot forward out there so much, and you don't want to hold, like, say, a relationship. You don't want to hold this relationship responsible for a
Mhm.
past relationship. So
Mhm.
you try to look at everything day to day, but just the pattern of attack against marginalized communities. I mean, obviously, I'm female. I have melanin. Not just this community, but like it's just it can be overwhelming.
Mhm.
And so, you know what? I think we should maybe let's talk about some of the things that are in the news. So, guys, you're watching Knowledge and Nonsense. Today, we're going to be talking about communicating best practices intra and interdepartmentally. We're going to talk about some things that happen in the department, what is the best way to communicate best practices. And I think even as we talk about the news, what's going on in the news, communication is a key
Yeah.
factor in that as well. So we have a dynamic guest with us today, Mr. Brian Reynolds. So let's bring Brian Reynolds in, and yeah, let's see what's going on
Yeah.
in the news.
Yeah. Let's dig into it.
All right. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
Hello,
What's
hello,
up,
hello.
Dwayne? How you doing?
Hey, Brian. Good to see you. Good to see
Same
you.
here, same here.
Good to see you.
Man, it was such a good thing seeing you at HSPA. But listen, man, we're talking today and we're talking about communication.
Yeah,
But we do want to, one thing about Knowledge and Nonsense is we're in the department, but we're also out of the department because none of us live at work.
Right.
And to that point, we all go to grocery stores, you know? And so, yeah, just some craziness this past weekend. What are your thoughts, Luane?
So even before I share my thoughts, if it's okay, I was on LinkedIn today, and by the way, I'm on LinkedIn every day. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. Um, I came across a piece that was written by a young lady named Simone Crawley. And Simone Crawley, she's the founder and CEO at the Crawley Cultural Consulting Group. So you can follow her on LinkedIn. And if I may, I want to read her piece to us tonight.
Yeah.
There are some explicities that I won't say, but in the nature of just journalism and writing and creativity, I think it's important we listen to this piece. So it says, my 86-year-old grandmother, Ruth Whitefield, was murdered on Saturday by a hate-filled, perverted white supremacist grown man. If it had been any other cause, I could process it differently. I could rationalize it somehow. But this is too close to home for me. How do you dedicate your life to fighting bigotry, trying to educate white people on their role in ending this blight on humanity, all for it to take your own grandmother? I feel like such a blank failure. I feel like everything I've done in my career was completely pointless. I know that it should make me want to doubt, it should make me want to double down and be my proof of why it's such important work, but I promise you, I feel the opposite. I feel like a fraud, like I've been spoon feeding white people these conversations about race as to not upset them, feeding into the fragility over and over again, asking them about racist relatives and having to tell them that it's not a reflection on them. But evidently it is. You have chosen the side of hate every second that you remain silent, telling us that young children can't handle conversations about race, but my grandmother's great grandchildren must look at her dead body. And I will have to tell my children her story because she won't be there to meet them. The last time I saw her, she was sitting in her living room and she was telling stories about her childhood in the rural South, stories about racism she has endured since birth. And I cannot believe it is the reason her life is over. She had at least 20 more years of life left. She didn't use a walker or a hearing aid, even had significant sight issues, or had no significant sight issues. I always struggle to even see her as an elderly. If you cared all about honoring my grandmothers and the other victims, I'm asking you, stop talking about the predator. He's nameless and faceless, and he is nothing and will die nothing so as long as you all let him. Instead, talk about the issues at hand, the absolute fabric of our nation, and what do we plan to do about it? Support a local organization in Buffalo gathering food for residents. This targeted a black community that turned into a black community by the white supremacy, but it was also a food desert. They can't simply go to another grocery store. In the meantime, pray for my family, specifically my grandfather, who lost his wife for nearly 70 years. She was murdered coming from her daily visit to see him. Pray for my soul. This is a type of moment where you find yourself at a moral crossroad. You can choose to turn pain into purpose and vibrate higher in love, or you can turn a corner and meet these people in the depths of hell and go tit for tat. I am paralyzed at this crossroad right now. And the only thing holding me up is a phrase my grandmother wrote to me in a letter. We fall down, but we get up. I pray that I can get up again one day, but that day is not today. I love you forever, Grandma, and I'm so sorry that I couldn't protect you. Right? I read that and I was overcome with emotion. Like her grandmother, my grandmother was also from the deep South, right? And I always remember those stories of sharecropping and just an unpleasant journey in this saga of our American story. And it still persists, right? And we have so much work to do, right? And I agree with her. Remaining silent is not an answer, right? So I think tonight we should talk about Mrs. Simone Cawley's experience, talk about what we've seen as a nation, because it's relevant. And Sharon, what you have said before, we don't live inside the department.
We don't.
This event and events like this are impacting everyone, and folks are carrying this around, right? And we have to find spaces, safe space that we can communicate and dialogue. But this is part of mental healing and growth. So I'm glad we have a platform here on Knowledge and Nonsense that we can exchange, dialogue, and find some purpose, right? Find some healing, and hopefully some young person, some person who may be watching, who may know someone who is conjuring up ideas that are anti-humanity, can have a change of heart, can see the purpose in all people, no matter their color, creed, religion, or sexuality.
And I read that as well, Luane.
Mm-hmm.
I actually read that as well. And I read it this morning. And for it to be on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
that to me, for it to be on LinkedIn, first off, the comments, people truly come from where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that people often recognize how their comments locate them. Your comments are an identifier of what you align with, of what you believe, and of your own perceptions and unconscious biases. And so for her to put that on LinkedIn, immediately the depth of her pain was
Mm-hmm.
evident. This is a CEO who has spent her life to educate, to fight things via education. Her mantra, her motto, do not choose violence,
Mm-hmm.
and so you dedicate your life to that. And then this, I don't even want to call it a senseless act of violence, because I believe that gives credence to, it was mental illness or something like that, because it wasn't senseless. He put a lot of time,
Mhm.
thought, calculation. It wasn't senseless. It was a it was a it was an informed decision that he made. And he made an informed decision to go into this food desert and to take life of those that did not share this man-made construct of race,
Mhm.
period.
Mhm.
And so, for her to put that on LinkedIn, she had to be hurting. Like,
Yeah.
just just like a bark at the moon type of, the type
Mhm.
of sound that comes out, that there's nothing you can do but release that sound. The pain that she must have felt. And man, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I read it this morning as well, and I saw that, and when you read it, the first thing you think of is look at the comments, and the first one that I saw, I had to close my door for a moment because it was one of those things that just made you angry because I'm
Mhm.
like, and no disrespect to anyone, but what I can tell you is, I say this all the time: a degree don't make you smart.
Mhm.
It doesn't.
To have no empathy to get on to say the things that were said in reference to it. First of all, she spoke her truth. That's
Mhm.
something that she was dealing with. That was something that she just experienced. So to get on and to try to negate the things that she said and how she felt about what she was dealing with at that time, I think it was it was very unsensitive of the person that actually wrote it. But what I did like about the fact is that a lot of people came on and said, wait a minute. First and foremost, this is her truth. Who are you to tell her what she can and cannot feel? And I just, it's happening more often than not. And
Yeah.
to be honest with you, in the roles that we are, like Louise said, yes, we're outside of the department, but we spend a lot of time in the department as well. So when you think about it, those of us that look like myself or look like Luane, we see that we got to look at this every day. It's a feeling that makes you stop in your track. It makes your heart stop when you see a police officer behind you, because we deal with that. Or when you walk into a grocery store, it's like, oh my God, what's the best time to go into this store? Or what's the best time to do these particular things? At this point, we're living in a world to where nothing is sacred anymore. Nothing is off limits, and you just don't know.
To be, and again, with the transparency, when there was a time, some people, just so many unarmed people of color have been killed. And the ones we know about is so many, but there's so many that the media does not speak on. And immediately, sometimes people with preconceived notions or biases, and they're unconscious biases. That's the thing. If someone's coming from a place of unconscious bias, unless there's an opportunity to truly plant a seed or have an informed conversation, I don't do it because it's unconscious. Basically, you sleep. So if you're unconscious, there's no sense in me talking to somebody who's unconscious. So this is unconscious bias. You have to be open to receive. But anyway, I'm just taking it back. Like, during the time, so many people that this has happened to, and we talk, we we always we always vilify the victim as Americans. I'm
Mhm.
American. So I'm saying media and everything, you vilify the victim. Well, if you just would have complied, well, her ex-boyfriend did such and such, like we really vilify the victim. And then when it happens and it's not something, in this case, I'm with the woman. I'm like, don't say his name. People say George Floyd's name, and I get that. But you know what I also want? I want us to say the name of the people who took their lives too sometimes, because like in Oklahoma, there was a cop who just kept raping Black women doing these stops. You guys may have known it a few years back.
Yeah.
And when he was arrested and convicted, all of a sudden he came up missing. Like people couldn't find him anymore. And I'm like, no, say his name. Say the name too of the person who killed Sandra Bland. Like, don't make it about them, but say their name so that
Right.
when they move into my neighborhood, I know who's
Yeah.
patrolling my city. I know instead of them being able to just go and get a job. So I understand her saying, like, don't say his name.
Right.
But overall, I'm like, no, say his name. Say his
And,
name because we need to know. We need to know because 10 years from now, if he gets out because they say he was mentally ill or he wasn't designed to carry that much stress, maybe some options that people with melanin haven't really experienced. I want to know his name so that if he's in my community, I know. Okay, I'll stop now. I've just,
no, but it's absolutely relevant. And bottom line, look, I have white people in my family. Period. This is not an indictment on everyone, right? This is we have to talk about something that is systemic in many areas of our society. Listen, no one's making this up. This isn't make believe. Sometimes you can turn a channel and get a different narrative. But when you turn a channel and it's the same narrative, you have to believe that just for a moment, it may not be in your neighborhood, but it's reality, right? And on the same breath, there was another violent incident in California in a church, where
the young man, the Asian community.
yeah, the a gunman comes in there to, I believe, a Taiwanese Indian church and calculated, begin to put crazy glue on the locks, padlock the doors, and he had full intentions on inflicting harm on his entire community. You're mad at everyone, everyone gets indicted because of something that may have happened in your history. So I don't subscribe to that universal law of hate. I don't think anyone should subscribe to that. But dealing with the issues at hand, we have work to do. We're still talking about and dealing with the same issues that our grandparents have been dealing with. Different variations and much worse in circumstance, but the same issue of hate towards people that don't look like me, sound like me, or um, I read something called replacement theory, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of folks who subscribe to this white supremacist mantra embrace this slogan that we must secure the existence of our people and the future of our white children, right? We must secure that fragileness. You know, we say this one America, but there's never really been one America, right? There's always been the rich and the poor, the have and the have nots. And in some cases, what I've learned, the term food desert was a term I wasn't intimately familiar with. But this is real, you know,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is real.
That's why I say too, it wasn't a senseless act. It's easy for people to be like, oh, that's just a senseless act. And I get they may want to be, at that time, they're attempting to be empathetic and show their support. It's a senseless act. But I think we actually miss what it is when we say that. In this case, it wasn't a senseless act.
It can't be a senseless act when
It
you
was
posted
calculated.
things about it ahead of time, and when you actually went in and did those particular things, and when you found other people that may have, I mean, they showed when the guy fell to the ground, and he was like, "Oh, not you." What do you mean, not you? It's just I don't understand it, and I think not even I think I know for a fact that a lot of times when people don't look like us and can't walk in our shoes, they don't understand why we feel the way that we feel and why we deal with the things the way that we do. It's a difficult process, and when you work in the department and you are a manager and you don't look like everyone else, those are conversations that have to be had. They may be difficult, they are difficult to have, but you have to address it because it's intentional. Think about it. In certain places, when you make decisions in an apartment and you have to, I've never let anybody go, but let's just say that person let themselves go with the things that they've done. You know, You hear about people come back in and they kill everybody in the department, and those it's
You know what, Brian? It's interesting. I want to read this comment from Dr. Paul W. Dyer. He said, "Our community is not being trained, and many Black Americans don't seek training to be prepared for from the mind to the physical. This is why our community is a target." So interesting. When I write a piece by a Dr. Ray Sean Ray, um, he put something in the piece that was extremely disturbing. He said when this terrorist left during his exit, he even had time to apologize to a white guy for pointing the gun at him. Right. So look how deeply ingrained the hatred for another man, woman, another human, it permeates in certain circles.
Listen, okay, go ahead, Luane.
No, please jump in, jump in.
That's how deep that hatred permeates, but also how deeply embedded is the supremacy loyalty. He didn't even know that gentleman. And that's what sometimes is an unconscious mindset. He didn't know that gentleman, but somewhere he deemed that gentleman worthy of an apology just by skin color, worthy of common decency just by skin color. That's what I'm saying. This young man was not mentally ill. It makes it easier to swallow for a large portion of our population, but this young man wasn't mentally ill at all. No more than Putin is mentally ill. This was a strategic attack, a terrorist attack meant to strike terror in the hearts of that community and of people of color, period. To say, hey, you can't even go grocery shopping. You can't even go grocery shopping.
And it makes you think about
it just
that movie, A Time to Kill, and I think you all know that whole thing where was it Matthew McConaughey? I think
it was Matthew McConaughey. He played the
who
lawyer.
had to say the defense, and when he had to defend the actions of Samuel L. Jackson, and he asked everybody to close their eyes, and he stated all the things that had occurred, and then he said at the end of it, "Now imagine if they were white." And it's funny because on that thread that she did, someone that looks not like you and I said that exact same thing. And I'm not gonna lie, when you read it and when you just look at when you read the pain of what you read, Luane, because there were things that you had to take out, but when you read it and when I read through the comments and I saw that, I promise you, I lost it, because it's the whole thing of, wow, why are we still in this time and in this age of 2022, why are we still having to close our eyes and think about what if the person was white? Why? We bleed red just like anybody else. We put on our clothes, we get up, we do the same thing that everybody else does. But
I think
it's like a lot of people don't get it unless they close their eyes and see it differently.
Well, I definitely believe if the shooter had been 18-year-old African-American male who traveled hours into a food desert, a strategically placed grocery store, to the only source of groceries, into a food desert, after publishing a manifesto and streaming it live to be sure that it was known, I don't believe. I would be willing to wager a large portion of life savings and life longevity. I don't believe the first thing that we would be seeing is he's mentally ill. That would not be the rallying cry. He may be a thug. He may be, I don't even want to get into that. But the difference in approach is what's hard. Wait, let me say this too, Luane.
Sure.
And this actually, like, some people be like, well, that's not SPD. But SPD, if you look into the industry of sterile processing, into the industry of surgical support, it is mainly marginalized communities, people of color, not just Black people, but people of color. And so this stuff does come into the department.
Oh yeah.
You know, you can say all day long, this is the workplace, you got to leave that outside. That's not possible.
Mm-mm.
We work with people, and people are like, come on, man.
Listen, listen. For any and those folks who have are in authority in these facilities, offer your team members mental health a talk. Make sure they understand the number. Make sure they understand the process to reach out to someone in human resource. It's weighing heavy on a lot of people. A lot of people. And for those watching, guess what? Your African American brothers and sisters, right? Your folks who are permanently tanned. We are talking about this at our dinner table. This is real talk. We're letting you inside right now. No, so be our guest. You know, we had to look and look our children and our nieces and nephews and be able to interpret what the world witnessed. What are we witnessing right now? How? Why? How come? What did she do? She's an older woman. You know, how come it was streamed live? You know, all of the questions. How come the streaming service didn't flag it? How come he was assessed by the state police for mental sickness, but was released because they found no mental sickness? So that argument's out the window. How come? And I truly believe if if he was anything but black, if he was black or any other minority, darker person, he would have never made it to the police station. You know, this is real. You know, when we watch the news, if they don't show the perpetrator's face in the first news clip, this is a silent indicator to me, the people I eat dinner with. Oh yeah, it definitely wasn't someone black or colored, right? Definitely wasn't, because black or colored, the news clip would be preceded by a picture first, the warning sign, and then you get the story, right? They're sharing one person's experience. So we have to do a better job. We can't stay silent. I understand some people are reluctant to have these hard conversations, but guess what? Whether you're gonna have them or not, it's in your community. It's affecting everyone. It's affecting and impacting everyone. And unless we find those safe spaces to talk, to share, and shouldn't be politicized. I don't think it's one person's problem. This is an American problem. This is something that's plaguing us all. It's not a black problem. It's not a white problem. It's plaguing us all. And until we identify that and recognize it and see the signs, it's nerve-wracking. You know, this was a freaking grocery store. You know, this grocery store, a grocery store. You know, this is as painful as Sandy Hook, as painful as Columbine, as painful of any event where innocent people who are not at war are being slaughtered for no other reason but race, bigotry, hatred, and senselessness.
Yeah, and I believe one of the victims too was a retired police officer who was doing security. And so, you know, I mean, like, yeah, this gentleman is he's a murderer. It's premeditated murder. It's premeditated murder. And unless it's premeditated murder, that's it. That's it. And I understand maybe, I don't know. I don't understand anything. You know, we've all everybody knows somebody that mommy didn't love them correctly or daddy didn't love them correctly. But this is premeditated murder. This is not mental illness. This is somebody who had the intellect, the capacity, and the foresight to, again, select a target. It wasn't a random grocery store. He just wasn't having an off day and it's like, you know what, I can't take it today. That's a mental break. You know, when you snap or you have a psychotic break. This gentleman clearly thought out a plan, followed that plan, had the calmness to drive hours to carry out that plan, to and did test runs to make sure that the live stream and that the broadband could support the live stream. And so no, let's call it exactly what it is. This is premeditated murder. And I don't apologize for whoever you are, whether you whether you're a person of color or not, whether you are a man or not, whether you are a business owner or not, whether you are a gun owner or not. I don't apologize for calling it exactly what it is, nor do I apologize for talking about it because it might make you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, if we're just like with business, if you're unwilling to go through an uncomfortable part in business, you'll never reach your goals. If we're unable to have uncomfortable conversations, we're never going to get to an understanding. We're not going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, dude is a murderer.
It
And I
is.
truly hope that, and I don't hate him. I can only speak for me. I don't hate him.
Right.
But I truly hope that he's addressed as a murderer. Because again, even and I know we're supposed to be talking about communication
We are.
and best practices in the workplace, intra and interdepartmentally. But again, these are the people you work with.
Right.
These are
But
the
I think
people you
that
work
is
with.
communication, because that was the one thing that, like Luane said, being the mental health and things of that nature, because we deal with staff on a level that, these last 2 years have just been horrific. And people are going through things that they normally wouldn't have gone through. And a lot of people don't know who they can go and talk to, or, how to release. I can only, like Luane said, I can only speak for those of us who are African American. We're taught differently as men. There are certain things that we can't do because of the way we were raised. You don't talk about your feelings. You don't express your feelings.
Mhm.
If something is wrong and you feel that it is a mental thing, you don't talk about it. Well, guess what? We ain't in those days no more. We gotta talk about it. We were never taught to tell somebody, hey, when somebody does something for you, whether it be male or well, when it's the male, you don't say I love you or just I appreciate you, and
Mhm.
those types of things. And honestly, we get beat up a lot as managers, and this is not just race. This is everything. When you sit in a seat that you manage other people, you have to be that mentor. You got to be the psychiatrist. You got to be the motivator. You got to be the big brother, the little brother, all so many different things and facets. And yes, we need to deal with the mental part of our staff, but then you also got to realize, what about that manager? Who's helping them? Who's helping them make sure that their well-being is okay? Because you can't pour into somebody else's cup when yours is empty.
Yeah, you know what? Well said. Well said. Mental health is needed. Many communities, and this is beyond color, many communities have been under such an enormous amount of mental stress and strain for generations that it becomes the norm. Like, it becomes norm. You see a mass shooting, it's like, oh, that's another one. Oh, it happened again. Um,
Right.
I remember, and I heard someone say this today. I remember I was in New York near the World Trade Centers during 9/11, right? So I remember that experience up close because I was there. And I remember for the next week or so, the energy in my community was one of uniformity. Why?
Yeah.
Because someone attacked America, right? It was an outsider. Whatever theory you subscribe to, in that moment, it was an outside threat that attacked American way of life, attacked America. These mass shootings and shooters should be viewed in the same way. Someone attacked America. Not only did they attack this black and brown isolated community with a food desert, but someone attacked our way of life. Well, if we begin to look at things in a uniform way as a true family, these conversations wouldn't be abstract. They would be the norm. That would be the norm. People wouldn't be so afraid to make someone else uncomfortable. right? Because we will have a unified response. It'll be a unified response. So we have work to do. We have a lot of work to do.
And the way you're right. Think about the situation that happened in Texas at remember when was it Texas or Las Vegas? Was it Las Vegas when they were up high and the people were at a concert and they were just
Vegas.
You know, you got to look at, and even that situation. I mean, it brought a lot of people together, especially in sterile processing, simply because look at the two hospitals that are affected and look at the things that was done.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those particular people that worked in that particular facility, when they came to a conference and they talked about it, I mean, it was so detrimental to where they cried. I mean, a lot of people broke down, and they actually were able to release because they were talking to people that understood what they had to deal with. The shooting in Orlando. What was so funny about it is when that particular situation happened, I had just rolled by that club going home. So, we've all had certain circumstances where those particular things were done senselessly. I mean, this particular individual that did it in Orlando, he had been to the club and mapped it out several times, and he made a decision.
You know what, Brian? Again, those are our neighbors. These are loved ones. No one should have to have the conversation or receive the phone call that grandma not coming back home, or that your loved one went to the store. Went to the store, and they're not coming back. They're not so. You can have it, Sharon. They're not soldiers at war. They're not militia groups. They're not in armed combat. These are innocent, everyday Americans doing what Americans decide to do in their everyday.
Which is go to the grocery store just to put food in their house.
Going to get some vegetables.
That's it.
I want to share this. Again, reading the thing today, and it broke my heart because I was like, I only saw it once, but I was like, what? Like the part of it is just like, what? And that's why everything I do, whether it's knowledge or nonsense, it is about vetting processes at this point. I mean, I understand the assignment. But LaWayne, you said something powerful. You said there was an attack against America, and there was unity. There was unity. When that attack happened, you didn't hear anyone say, well, white people have been killing white people a long time. Right. Or rich people, that was in the towers, that rich people have been doing wrong to other people for. It was none of that. It's uniformity. Somebody attacked America. And even had somebody gone into, when they went into Pulse, I didn't see a lot of comments that said, well, LGBT members have killed LGBT members, before. But with this, somewhere in that thread of that woman's pain, somebody felt the need to post something about Black on Black crime. What does and again, it just goes to, I don't even think they were trying to be a butthole or an a-hole. I truly believe people it's called cognitive dissonance. And sometimes we need to believe a delusion because it's easier and more palatable for our mindset. And it's easier for us to take in. And so
listen, that's powerful. I also believe that we have many generations of parents that failed. They failed to teach their children, a different narrative. For instance, my grandmother was a sharecropper. You think she gave me the tenets of how to sharecrop, or did she teach me something opposite or different? Right? She's not going to teach me from a place of pain. She's going to share that experience, so her kin, her folk, her family can be better and different. How are we teaching our children to be better world citizens, not just good citizens in the house? With people who look like them, same last name, same religion, same sexual preference, same whatever. How do we teach people to be good global citizens? There's not a monolithic view of all black people are not the same, all white people are not the same. But guess what we all have in common? This is our country. This is a shared experience. If it's hurting you, it's hurting me. Um, I would love that we had time to dig deeper into just how that in that community, because that community is not unique. I just pulled up this. It said the USDA defines a food desert as a place where at least a third of the population lives greater than 1 mile away from a supermarket for urban areas, or greater than 10 miles for rural areas. By this definition, about 19 million people in America live in a food desert. So 19 million people are at risk for being hungry or having little or no access to adequate nutrition. 19 million. So not only did this terrorist select a black community, one of the poorest, he selected one um, at a business that was already fragile in its stance. So who knows the mindset, right? I pray that no other terrorist was inspired by what this guy did. Um, no one else will had any other ideas to go out and hurt someone because they are so disconnected from their God, from humanity. It's just a tragedy. Only Bush said, yeah, that was we really do take for granted the freedom we think we have is not really freedom we live in. So true. So true.
And again, you have spoken about the Americas. There are different levels of freedom. And I know people are like, no, everyone has the same opportunities. And again, when you're speaking to people who may or may not have unconscious bias, you really have to guard your energy, and you almost have to have relationship with someone if you're wanting to, because there's no sense in arguing to prove a point. It's better to educate and create a difference. And that's why this woman that's part of her pain too.
Yeah.
She's dedicated her life to educating and making a difference, to saying welcome all today. And
I know you had said that it was on LinkedIn, but when you actually read everything she said, like she said, at the end of the day, she was trying to find a peace of mind to see where does she go for here, because she said that she was at a crossroads and she just needed to figure out what she needed to do. But right now, this was the place where she was at. And I understand that when you go through different situations, I mean, she could have been the type of person to say, okay, and find out what his family was and go do things. That's not what she did. She just spoke her truth. She spoke about what she was dealing with and the situation of what she was handling at that moment. And she stated, I'm at a crossroads and I need everybody to help me make sure. And I can't remember how she worded it, but she was at a crossroads. And the thing about it, for someone to not see the empathy in that, to start pointing the fingers and saying different things, that was the part that got me. It was like, but what if it was your grandmother?
Right.
Take away the fact that it was a black woman. What if it was your grandmother? Put yourself in this woman's shoes and understand where she's coming from. She's expressing her pain. That was what she went through. That didn't happen last week. I mean, that didn't happen 10 years ago. It just happened.
Yeah. And guess what, Brian?
Way of dealing with it.
It's never gonna go away.
Never.
Well, just like we are gonna forget this moment at some point. It won't have the same emotional impact. We'll not forget. It won't have the same emotional impact in 10 years for most. But this family, those families who had relatives, that community, is now a permanent impression on their entire existence. They're going to always remember that pain. They're going to always remember the video. They're going to always remember this guy's name. So we need to show empathy. We need to talk to our neighbors. Like in New York, Sharon, when you're on the train, you hear an announcement say, if you see something, say something, right? You see something, say something. Now, this is the time. It's been the time for you to try to save a life. I'm not saying go out and be a hero. Call somebody. I think it was a good move. Whoever informed the state troopers that this guy's mental well-being, but it wasn't enough. They go far enough because we didn't prevent it. And the heartbreaking fact in these stories is that we find ourselves on the opposite end all the time, talking about things that should have, could have, would have prevented this. What's the preventative measure? How can we tackle, identify, and I want who believe, Sharon and Brian, that these social media platforms have a responsibility.
Which is and I just want to say too, for those of you in the surgical support industry, I don't care if you're working on the back table, if you scrub tech inside the room, or if you're in sterile processing, materials management, GI, wherever it is you're working. Listen, grace to you. Grace to you. Whether you personally knew someone at TOPS or not, grace to you. Because people say things that I believe to be asinine. People make comments that are strictly based in ignorance and insensitivity. But I'm going to ask you to hold your form. And I'm going to say this is why we must vote. We must remain involved. We must not just live transactional lives, but transformational lives. Just because it wasn't your grandmother, we must use our voice and our influence. Listen, cherry pickings, don't. Let's use our voice, and yes, let's use our influence. We must continue to be involved in everything. And I'm not just saying political voting. I'm talking vote at your homeowners association meeting, vote at the PTA meeting, vote at the town hall meeting, vote at the HSPA meetings. Like, vote, be involved in decisions that are being made. Love your community. Love the future of your love the futures of your loved ones and those that you're going to leave this space to. Love them enough to sit in a meeting, even if you feel like it's not going to do any good. Sitting that meeting, find out, as Sharon Green Golden would say, the rules of engagement. But right now, please be aware, because a physician may say something dumb. Your coworker may say something dumb. They may say something racist. They may say something that's just ignorant. And you know what? You may say something that's dumb or ignorant. So I'm going to ask everybody to just hold your form. I know emotions are high right now. Yes, exactly, Arlene. Be encouraged. Be encouraged. This is a premeditated murderer.
No. Yeah.
Calculated moves. There is no mental illness.
But I
knew what he
think,
was doing.
Like you said, though, but I think this was vital, because the conversation needed to be had, instead of just letting it be. Dwayne said it best. Yes, we may move beyond this, but you got 10 families that their whole life was changed, and that whole community actually is going to be, changed by that whole situation. I one of the other things that I saw is that, Dwayne, I think you commented on the fact that Walmart put something there. A lot of people say things about Walmart and different things and so on and so forth, but they are prevalent in communities, and they do reach out, and they do help with certain things. I spend a lot of time as a manager there, and there are a lot of things that they do in their community that's unspoken of, and people don't know it, and they don't talk about it. They don't brag about a lot of the things that they do for the community. But if you work in management with Walmart, you're gonna give back to the community. That's a requirement. That's one of the things that they always make sure that their managers did. You're gonna spend time in your community. You're gonna volunteer for things, and you're gonna do things. So I think having these conversations are prevalent, because if you don't have them, then other people won't know.
Yeah, very true. Walmart actually put out a very powerful statement, and many companies are bringing are supporting this community. I just think as a nation, as a community, this is a fact, right? The New York City's operating budget is one of the largest in the country. There's only two other areas that have a larger operating budget than New York City. It's so large, it's bigger than Trinidad and Tobago put together. is so large that the state of California is larger than New York City and the state of New York, right? So the resources are there in many states. You know, America is the richest, greatest country in the world. I'm proud to be an American, as we all are, right? But we have to do more. We have to do better. It shouldn't take a tragedy to this magnitude for folks, the majority at large, to get the attention. And now we have a new a trigger word: food desert. Food desert. It's probably getting so many Google searches. Food desert. We have to get more involved. We must. Arlene Bush. I'm changed by this and will continue to pick up orders for groceries and other items more online. I'm sorry, I just messed that all up. Read that again.
Yeah.
I'm changed by this and will continue to do my pickup orders for groceries and other items more now than ever before. Yeah, yeah. It's changing again how we live, how we thrive.
And that breaks my heart. I understand it just the same way COVID did. But that also breaks my heart because your community is still, yeah, man. How dare you come into somebody else's community and do that? Yeah,
And then the thing about it is he chose that particular place. I mean, for me, for some people, the grocery store, especially for those particular people who are older, my grandmother goes to the grocery store because that's where she meet her friends and they talk on the aisles and do things and taste food in the from the deli and things of that nature. So it's like this further puts people in positions to where they don't feel comfortable with going places and doing things. The grocery store was someplace that the grocery store to older folks is just like the barbershop to myself, Dwayne, or the beauty shop to you, bitch. Those are the places that we go to just shoot the breeze on different things and just to release, because you already know somebody in there gonna be telling stories that's not true, but you go just laugh anyway because that's what we do. And you just get with people just to have a good time, just to fellowship. Let's put it that way. That's the best word for it.
That's a great word. Hey, Brian.
Fellowship with each other. So pretty much you took the only place that whole community actually went to fellowship, and now they don't have that anymore. Those of us in bigger cities, that's Wally World. I'm gonna be honest with you. Wally World is the only place you can go to find the entire family. Everybody, with the grandmama, the great grandmama, and everybody, you will find them in Wally World. So, I mean,
you know what's powerful, Brian? You're so right. Those grocery stores and other settings for some is the original Facebooks, the original Instagram, the original Snapchats, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I love, and I love the person I was born into. Period. The resilience of that community. Little terrorist, little man, little boy. You cause a lot of pain, but you're not gonna stop their greatness. You're not gonna stop their love from permeating to others. I even saw one mother. She said, first thing she said, I don't hate him. I pray for him. Look at the strength and the amount of love from a victim who was just victimized, wounds still open, to look her victim in the eye and say, I don't hate you. I still love you. I pray for you. We just gotta stop this myth that Black men in particular are from a violent species. If we were half as violent as some parts of our country pretend that we'll be, we wouldn't have an America. Think about that. We wouldn't have an America. So let's stop this fictitious and painting this image, driving a small, narrow-minded narrative. And This is not an indictment on all, right? This is from a select group of people who subscribe to that foolishness. It was the same select group of people. So hate never wins. Hate hurts. It hurts a lot, but hate will never win.
I want to read this to you guys. This is from W Top News, and it actually is talking about what the Great Replacement Theory is. And so this gentleman who actually is speaking on ways to debunk the theory and bring people out of it, he's saying why it's so dangerous. He said the great replacement theory allows you to put the blame on someone else so that you don't have to take the blame. You don't have to blame yourself. And that's an emotional recipe for disaster. And it's so seductive to people because it allows you to be the hero in your own mind. And
Mhm.
in this case, that's the gentleman writing the manifesto and things like that. It's allowing him to be a hero in his own mind or try to portray himself as such instead of saying, no, you are a cold-blooded, calculated killer.
And I
And
can see
his
that.
skill sets probably would do well in a military operation because he definitely located the food desert, located the place, was willing to commit to the journey to get there. Yeah. So I'll put that
Yeah,
in, Wayne. I'll put that link in. Hey guys,
please do.
maybe next Tuesday we can really go into best practices. Hey, thanks for being with us tonight. Um, and again, for those of us out there in the department and facilities, it's still patient safety. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we this is what we get to talk about tonight. This is what
Yeah.
we have to do, but we must address it because you have a responsibility when you have a voice. You have a responsibility when you have a platform. So I'm sorry that this is still going on. I'm sorry that
Yeah.
we're
You
in a
know,
country where sometimes people still want to devalue. I'm just sorry, man.
yeah. Sharon and Brian, we laugh, we like everyone else, we hurt, we love, but we are appreciative that the folks who are viewing us, uh, our huge knowledge and nonsense squad, the comments that come in, we do appreciate you, and we welcome you to these inner discussions because this is what some of our families are talking about at the dinner table since it happened. These,
Yeah.
these are discussions, and sometimes you have to release it. You have to release it. You have to talk it through, and really find the help. There's help out there. There's more love than hate in this world. Way more love than hate. But these are things we got to deal with because some of these true haters and terrorists are our neighbors, right?
Yeah.
So be careful. Be kind. And team Now Johnson, thanks for having the courage just to engage because it's important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I thank you all so much. Brian Reynolds, if your schedule will permit, listen, guys, this is knowledge and nonsense where we're going to vet processes, patterns, and perspective. And we're going to ask, is it knowledge or is it nonsense? And sometimes nonsense is so large that it demands that we address this. Because even though that was foolishness and nonsense, we still have to process that. Our community, as Luane said, we're inviting you in. You're our guest. So we're processing that. But we do want, Mr. Reynolds, if you are available, please, I'll get with you after the show because we do want to talk about communication intra and interdepartmentally as it relates to communicating best practices. Many of us have seen ST91. There have been certain changes. There are best practices out there. We really want to look at what takes precedent, whether it's AAMI or A.O.R.N, like who, what, where, when, and how do we communicate these things? Because when something is communicated, that means it leaves the sender. There's a mode of transmission. We know about the mode of transmission, and it lands with the receiver. And you want it to have the same structural content and same structural integrity it had when it left the sender. And we really just want to talk about that, the different ways that we can do that effectively, inter and intra departmentally. And so we're going to do that next Tuesday. You guys, please join us here on Knowledge and Nonsense. If there's something you're wanting to bring to your team or something you're wanting to address, send it to us. You can send us the question at 214-717-5921, or you can just reach out to us on LinkedIn. Please connect with all of us on LinkedIn, like and follow the page. And again, be encouraged. Be
Hmm.
encouraged. Life is a gift, and overall, it is a good thing. And there are some people who want to snatch how you see life and opportunity and the blessing that it is. And I can't say how I really feel about those people right now on knowledge and nonsense. Now, just playing, but don't let them do that. Don't
Yeah,
let them do that at all. You
yeah.
know.
Hey, Mr. Emmerich Martin Jr., thank you for watching, sir. Thank you for sharing some of your time with us.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Mr. Martin.
Yeah.
Good to see you again. All right, gentlemen. Is there any final words? Are we good to go? Everybody, woosah. Tell your people you love them.
Well, I would just say this. I think, like Lorraine was saying with the mental when it comes to sterile processing, when we went to HSPA, one of the things that I took away from that is that both speakers talked about being intentional with your words and what you speak and what you say. So I would say that to anyone that's in management that has to deal with their staff, just be intentional with what you say and think about it before you give it. Just be intentional and be in the moment. And I think with everything that's going on, sometimes that's hard because we all are experiencing things of our own. But just be intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with
Well,
it.
I intentionally love you both, right?
I got you.
Be safe, be well, and looking forward to seeing you on the next on the road. On the road again? See you soon.
Yes, on the road again. Keep doing what you do. Y'all be safe. God bless and have a great
Good
night.
night. Have a good one.